Do you want to learn to play Plunderbund?
In this video, we're going to take you through the rules of this game. Coming up. Hi, it's Tarrant.
It's Stella from Meeple University, bringing you a variety of quality board game videos.
In this video, we're going to show you how to play Plunderbund, a game from Adam Chun and Woody Hutzel by Huchu Enterprises.
Let's get to the table.
In Plunderbund, players play the role of black market merchants in the fantasy city of Sprawl. Through the game, players will take actions from the cards that they build in their deck in order to gain goods, spread their influence throughout the city by placing agents and racketeers, and ultimately improve the quality and attributes of their goods by going up on these tracks on the outside of the board. 4 times during the game, at the end of each season, players will compete with each other to sell their goods to the merchants. Different merchants will want different attributes in their goods, and only the player who is strongest in that attribute will be able to sell that good. Or alternatively, players can send racketeers to extort those goods out from under the rightful players. Players will gain reputation points during the game for selling their goods and extorting, as well as points at the end of the game for having area control over each of the 4 quarters of the board. There are a few other ways of gaining bonus reputation points, and ultimately at the end of the game, the player with the highest reputation wins. We're teaching you the game today from a prototype copy, and so the art and components and rules may not be final. I'm going to take you through full setup of the game, and the game has quite a number of features which will vary with player count when you go through the setup. Use the side of the board which corresponds to your player count, and you can tell this from the number of squares in each of these tracks. This side is for 4 to 5 players. Each player places one of his or her cubes on the bottom space of each of these tracks, and on the 0 space of the reputation track. The left to right order of these cubes does not matter on the starting space, but it will matter as you move up these tracks. Place the round marker on January. Next, place any closed merchant markers which correspond to your player count. You'll be able to see at the bottom of each of these tiles which player counts it relates to. This will reduce the number of available merchants based on your player count, but note that even at the maximum player count of 5, you will be placing a few of these at the start of the game. Next, find all of the demand coins and find the ones which correspond to your player count. Once again, you'll find this in small print at the bottom of the tile. Alternatively, the ones which correspond to your player count are the ones which have a number on them corresponding to a merchant on the main board on which you have not placed a closed merchant token. So in the 4-player game, you would take all the tokens that say 2 to 5, 3 to 5, and 4 to 5. What you'll be left with is all of the tokens with numbers corresponding to closed merchants, and all of the generic coins which have no numbers on them. Put all of these coins off to the side. They may be used later in the game if those closed merchants are later opened. Next, you'll need to sort out the cards. This is a deck building game, and so the backs of all of the cards will be the same, and so you'll need to sort them out by what's printed on the front. First, find all of the starting cards, indicated by a grey border or a little S in the bottom right corner. Each player should assemble a starting deck using 1 copy of each of the 8 different types of starting cards in the game. Next, sort out the recruit cards. The agent cards, which will say agent or have a deep red border, are used in all player counts, and simply take them and put them off to the side for later in the game. For the remaining cards, you'll have some with black borders and some with white borders, and these correspond to different player counts. And you can see this again in the bottom right corner of the card. With 2 to 3 players, you'll only use the black cards, and with 4 to 5 players, you'll shuffle the black cards and the white cards together into a single deck. Place these off to the side as well for later in the game. Finally, you'll have a deck of bright red bordered favour cards. All of these are the same, and so you put them in a face-up deck near the board. Each player then takes a player board, 8 agents and 5 racketeers in his or her colour, and the starting deck. The player's remaining 2 cubes go in these locations. Finally, distribute the 4 start player tokens, one for each season, as equitably as you can between the players. In a 2-player game, each player takes 2 at random. In a 3-player game, 1 player takes winter, and then the other 3 are distributed randomly among all players. Each player takes 1 in a 4-player game, and in a 5-player game, the Gain 2 reputation bonus is added for the player who misses out on a starting player token. You're now ready to play. Plunderbund is played over 12 rounds of actions, each representing a month of the year. After every 3rd month, at the end of the season, this will be interrupted by a tally phase, where players sell goods to score points, and a recruit phase where players gain more cards. Each of the 12 action rounds follows the sequence of events printed at the bottom of the player board. First, demand is generated, in which demand coins are drawn from the cloth bag and placed on the main board for all players to use. Then all players draw up to their hand limit from their personal deck. Then players will take their actions based on the actions available on the cards they've drawn. This phase starts with the player who has this season's start player token, and that player takes all of the actions that he or she wishes to take for the round before play passes to the next player clockwise. After all players have taken their actions, players gain an income of goods into their warehouse, and then you move to the next month of the game and hand the start player token to the next player clockwise. When play passes to one of the tally phases, players will compete in this phase in order to sell their goods to the demand coins for victory points. Then in a recruit phase, players will gain their new cards into their deck before play passes to the next action round. Now let's go into each of these phases in more detail. The first phase of each action round is to generate demand, which means to put demand coins onto the map. To do this, look at each of the 4 tracks on the outside of the board and find the player who is leading on each of those tracks. Find the number to the left of the leading cube on each of the 4 tracks and add up those numbers. In this case, 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 8. Draw that many demand coins randomly from the bag and then place them on the merchants corresponding to their numbers. These will build up on the merchants over the 3 action rounds leading into the tally phase. Each merchant will have between 4 and 6 demand coins, 1 of each colour, plus 1 corresponding to each icon that is shown next to its number. Keep this in mind if you're specialising in the game, as merchants which have extra icons of your specialty type are probably going to be better places for you to play. Then, each player simultaneously draws and places face up a number of cards equal to his or her current hand limit. At the start of the game, a player's hand limit is 5, but a player can increase this to 6 or 7 during the game by moving up on the ingenuity track. If, while drawing cards, the player runs out of cards in his or her draw deck before completing the hand, the player shuffles his or her personal discard pile and then continues drawing from the new pile. Once all cards are drawn, proceed to taking actions. In the take actions phase, players use their cards to take the actions printed on them in text. Players may use their cards and take their actions in any order. Each card may be used only for a single action. Some cards only have 1 action printed on them, and some have 2, separated by a horizontal line. And when playing one of these cards, you must choose one of the 2 actions to take. More importantly, each action on a card has a cost in favours, which is shown on this banner to the right hand side of the card. For each favour that is required for that action, you must take 1 favour card from the deck of favour cards, which will then be shuffled in with your discard pile when you discard the card. So, as an example, a player's turn might involve taking the actions from these 5 cards, taking 1 favour for each of these, taking 2 favours for the protection action on the thug, and taking no favours for the bribe action on the guild leader. After the player finishes taking his or her actions, all of these cards, both the favours and the actions, will go together into the player's discard pile. So let's look at the implications of taking favour cards. Later on in the game, when you come to prepare your hand, you're going to end up drawing a mix of action cards and favour cards. Favour cards have no action associated with them, They just clog up your hand, and as soon as you draw them, you will remove them from your hand and put them back into the common supply of favour cards. You do not replace these in your hand. You simply play with fewer available actions in this round. Therefore, you can think of the favour cost of a card as being a number of actions that you won't be able to take later on in the game. You don't know when these favours are going to come up, and so you may have a round where you still have your full hand available, and you may come up with a round where you're almost completely full of favours and no other actions. There are two ways in the game that you can avoid taking favours for your actions and therefore save your future actions. The first is to trade goods on the grey market. Spend a number of goods by returning them from your warehouse to the main supply, equal to your current ratio on the grey market, so in this case 4. This will allow you to avoid taking one favour card. You can do this as many times on your turn as you'd like, as long as you can afford to pay the cost. And you can reduce your grey market ratio to make this action cheaper by moving up on the quality track. The other way to avoid taking a favour for an action is to use a synergy. You won't have synergies on your starting cards, but you'll gain them as the game goes on. To use a synergy, take any action on the card which has the synergy written at the top, whether or not that action costs a favour, and then you'll be able to take the action on the matching starter card that's listed in the synergy box without taking any favours. So in this case, the player could steal with the ringleader for 1 favour, and then from the synergy, steal with the thief for free. Note that even if you have multiple cards which synergize with the same starting card, you can still only use each card's action once per round. Now that we understand how playing cards work, let's look at how all of the individual actions work. The most basic type of action is one that allows you to move up one or more steps on one of the tracks: quality, ingenuity, appeal, or price. To take this action, move your cube one step up the corresponding track, like so. For a normal card, when you move into a row containing other players' cubes, you will move your cube to the right of those already present. But if the card you played states last move advantage, then you can move your cube to the left of all of those already present and shuffle those other cubes to the right. Either way, when 2 or more cubes are on the same level of a track, whoever cube is to the leftmost position is considered to be ahead. Note that last move advantage does not work on the top row of the track. Moving up each of these tracks is important for winning the business of the merchants during the tally phase, but each track has an additional benefit that it gives you during the game. Moving up the price track gives you a greater income of goods. As mentioned before, moving up the quality track will reduce your grey market ratio, making a few bonus actions a little cheaper, and it can have a small impact on your goods income. Moving up the ingenuity track will increase your hand limit, and moving up the appeal track will grant you a reputation point each time you hit one of these 6 rows. The next major type of action is to place or move an agent. To place an agent, take one of your 8 agent meeples and then place it onto any open merchant on the board. Multiple players may place merchants at the same location, but a player cannot have more than one agent at the same location. To move an agent, simply take one of your agents from anywhere on the board and move it to any other open merchant. You must have an agent at a merchant to be eligible to sell goods to that merchant during the tally phase. The other major action is to place or move racketeers on the board. To place a racketeer, the player takes one of his or her 5 racketeer meeples and places it again onto any open merchant on the board. Unlike with agents, each merchant can only accommodate one racketeer at a time, and so if another player's racketeer is placed at a merchant, the racketeer already there is chased away to the hangout which corresponds to the colour of the same merchant. To move a racketeer, the player takes a racketeer from anywhere on the board and moves it to another open merchant. This can include a merchant with another racketeer, which will again chase that racketeer away to the hangout. Racketeers do not interact with agents in any way, and so racketeers don't chase agents away, and a player can have a racketeer and an agent at the same merchant. Those three basic actions, or variations upon them, make up most of the actions that you're going to take in the game. But there are a few smaller actions, and I'm going to take you through three of them specifically now. The muster and mollify actions are good ways of cycling through your deck and getting rid of favours quickly. Mollify will let you draw some cards from your deck and then simply remove any favours that you find and discard the rest. Muster allows you to do the same, as well as keeping one of the cards that you drew. The fence action gives you a one-off opportunity to open up one of the closed merchants and very quickly get in on its business. This card can only be used once and then it's removed from the game. To take this action, choose a closed merchant, take the bonus printed on the closed merchant token, in this case it's a step up the quality track, remove the token, and then find all of the demand coins corresponding to that particular merchant. You would have set these aside at the start of the game. Put all of those demand coins onto that merchant and add one of your agents. This puts you in a good position to start doing business with that merchant. The last type of action I'll talk about is hype, which allows you to add unbranded demand coins to a merchant. These are the demand coins that don't have a merchant number printed on them, and these will also have been put aside at the start of the game. Take any two of them and then put them onto any merchant of your choice. After all players have taken their actions, they'll discard any cards plus favours that they've collected, and then proceed to the earn goods phase. Check the number on the right hand side of the price and quality tracks corresponding to the location of your cube, and then gain that many goods into your warehouse. In this case it's 5. There is no limit to the number of goods you can hold in your warehouse. Finally, advance the month marker to the next month and move the start player token corresponding to the current season one step clockwise around the board. Other start player tokens stay where they are. At the end of each season is a tally round in which players will attempt to sell their goods to fulfill these demand coins and earn points. This occurs in two phases. First, extortion, which relates to all of the racketeers, and then sales, which relates to all of the agents. In the extortion phase, you will go in merchant order, one after another, performing the extortion step if you have a racketeer at the merchant. To extort, choose any one of the demand coins at that merchant, remove it from the board, and then claim 2 reputation points. The coin removed may be of any colour. Return the demand coin to the bag, unless it's a generic demand coin, in which case you return it to the pile at the side of the board. Each racketeer who is at emergent gets to take 1 demand coin and extort in this manner. Racketeers at hangouts do not take any action. Then proceed to the sell phase, and once again you're going to go in merchant order, resolving sales for any of the remaining demand coins. So let's look at merchant number 2. The only agents here are from the purple and green players, and there are 3 demand coins available. 1 blue one representing quality, and 2 green ones representing price. Of the players whose agents are present, check to see who is further ahead on the corresponding track. In this case, green is further ahead than purple on the green track, and purple is further ahead than green on the blue track, remembering that if you're further to the left on this track, you are considered ahead. This means that the purple player will have first option to sell this good, and the green player will have first option to sell these goods. To sell the goods, the player takes the demand token, puts it near his or her player board, and then takes a goods token and places it on top. Here, the green player could do likewise with these green tokens, like so. If the player does not have enough goods to fulfill a demand coin, or chooses not to fulfill the demand coin, then whoever is next highest on the corresponding track has the opportunity to fulfill that coin. In this case, green could fulfill this coin if purple chose not to. The exception to this is that a player must have moved at least 1 step up on the corresponding track to be eligible to sell that type of good at all. In this case, purple is uncontested in this area and could fulfill all demand coins except for green because he or she has not moved up at all on the price track. Once you've worked through all of the open merchants in this manner, tally up your scores for this round. Count up the number of demand coins that you've completed and then score 1 point for each coin. Return all of the goods that you spent to the main supply and return any demand coins, except for generic ones which don't show a merchant number, into the demand coin bag. All of your meeples, plus any unfulfilled demand coins, remain on the board for the next season, which you then proceed to with the initial recruiting phase. In the recruit phase, each player will add 2 cards to his or her deck to build it up and make it more powerful as the game goes on. To set up for the recruit phase, take your deep red agent cards and split them into 3 piles, the hucksters, prospectors and trusted advisors. Then deal out a number of the black and white bordered recruit cards equal to the number of players in the game plus 1. This is the market for the first round of recruiting. Starting with the player with this season's start player marker and going clockwise around the table, each player chooses 1 card from those that are available in the market. Then remove any of the black and white bordered cards and replace them again with a number of cards equal to the number of players plus 1. Then in reverse turn order, each player chooses another card from those that are available, so that each player will have taken a total of 2. Players do not have to make any sort of payment to take these cards. Then put all of these cards back off to the side. They won't be needed again until the next recruit phase. Each player takes the 2 cards that he or she drew and then places them face down on top of the draw deck. This means that they will definitely be drawn in the first action round of the new season. Then proceed with the next action rounds, and so on until the end of the game. Before we get to the end of the game, there are a couple more actions to go through. Once per round, as an action which costs you a number of goods equal to your current grey market ratio, you can draw an additional card from your deck into your hand. This will give you 1 more action for the round. If, when you make your initial draw of cards, you're unfortunate enough to have 4 or more favour cards in your hand, in addition to removing those favour cards, you may choose to lose 1 reputation in order to look through your deck and discard pile, find 1 card you no longer wish to have, and then remove it entirely from the game. This is called firing a guild member. You may wish to do this if one of your starting cards no longer helps your strategy. Finally, once you've reached the top of one of the 4 tracks, you may retire any of your cards that help you move on that track, as they are no longer of any use to you. Immediately remove any cards that are in your hand from the game and gain 1 reputation for each one that you do. On any subsequent turns, as soon as you draw a card which helps you on that track, you may also retire it, again removing it from the game and gaining 1 reputation. You do not redraw to replace that card when you do this. After the 4th tally phase, proceed to end of game scoring. First, resolve the 4 turf wars. Look at each of the 4 regions on the board separately, and these are the areas distinguished by different colours on the merchants. Count up the total number of figures, that's both agents and racketeers, that each player has within that region, including both the merchants and the hangout. The player with the most figures gains 5 reputation, second most gains 3, and third most gains 1. In the event of a tie, whoever is further up the quality track breaks that tie, and players must have at least 1 figure in a region to score any points. Resolve this for each of the 4 areas on the board. Then each player looks through all of his or her remaining cards, both deck and discard pile, and any favours that the player has not yet repaid are worth -1 reputation. The player with the highest score wins, and in the event of a tie, the player who is highest up the appeal track breaks the tie.
And that's how to play Plunderbund. We hope that you enjoyed the video and we hope that you enjoyed playing.
At the time of filming this video, Plunderbund is about to go live on Kickstarter, so do check it out there if you're interested. We'll leave a link in the description below.
If you enjoyed this video, please let us know by hitting the like button. Write your questions or feedback in the comment sections below. You can also join our Facebook group, Meeple University Community, to share your love of board games.
And finally, if you'd like to be among the first notified on what's new from Meeple University, please consider subscribing to our channel. You can click on the Meeple up in the corner to do so, and do hit the bell for notifications.
Until next time!